Good day, I'm Junior Researcher Adam Southgate, and today's lecture will be covering the Abomination spheres Bicwnen. I'd appreciate that all hunters please subscribe, as to not miss any future lectures, and also, if you enjoy the lecture and find it informative, please like the video and click the bell to ensure you do not miss any future announcements. Be to hear your thoughts, views, and stories of your own interactions with the monsters of the spheres in the comment area of this video. Also, I'm always ready to answer any questions you may have, and please share these lectures with any hunters you feel would benefit from them. So, to begin, as always, we'll start with our general announcements. Firstly, while we are still assessing the results of the plate skin poll, we have some troubling developments concerning it. As it turns out, the affliction is not a localized event, with populations that are the descendants of Welsh people from around the world, most of which who have never been to Wales, showing symptoms. This would imply some kind of targeted curse. However, even now the affliction does not appear to cause any issues greater than the plates themselves and the occasional seeping of pus. While we are still attempting to gain a handle on the situation, the Order would advise that those affected not attempt to remove these plate-like structures themselves until we have a better understanding of what we're dealing with. Those who have already attempted to do so have described the experience as similar to removing your own fingernail, and even then only to find it regrown the following day. Secondly, with the aid of Freelance Hunter at the Slumbering Sanctuary, we were able to question the Morganian Conclave holdouts that were captured by Hunter Dan Carrington and his team. The results of these interviews were disquieting to say the least. While the individuals were light on details, being not too high up in the Conclave social order, they did confirm that the Conclave forces were retreating when we arrived. Our first thought was that they were simply fleeing from ourselves, our thinking being that they had overestimated our weakened state after the defense of Dry Goch. However, according to the captured individuals, they were instead running from a coming calamity that they only learned about after the invasion had already begun. While they themselves did not know the details of this coming event, they did divulge that the many ritual sites our hunters observed as they crossed Anglesey were attempts to stop whatever had begun to make their leaders so afraid. Once it had become apparent that their magics were useless against whatever was coming, Ife Morgana herself ordered the general retreat. One thing of note, though, again light on details, the capture of Anthra, Ife Morgana's son, became top priority for the group, with a number of Conclave members being barred from returning to Avalon without him. Finally, the Order has launched the Brutus Protocol in conjunction with the KSG and the other anti-incursion organizations from across Britain. This entails the use of a cross-organization squad made up of individuals possessing a Teenged. Their complete invulnerability, apart from their fated demise, makes them perfect for dealing with splinter factions that crop up from time to time. In this case, Hunter, the Admiral 1234, previously known as Gas Mask Man, and the holder of Calabolg, the legendary sword, has made clear his intention to separate from the Order. While this alone would not be an issue, he also made allusions to directly attacking the Order in aim of removing from our custody a number of artifacts we have collected over our long tenure. This is a threat we cannot allow, as these artifacts are extremely dangerous and should not be used under any circumstance. While the Admiral 1234 did attempt to walk back his threat, offering a Chinese artifact as a peace offering, we will have to decline. Firstly, because such an artifact should be studied by those with the experience of the specific sphere the object originated from, in this case the Chinese anti-incursion team, and secondly because the Admiral 1234's motives have now been brought into serious question. As I speak, the Brutus Protocol is underway, with one of the Admiral 1234's caches of artifacts being currently raided. Our aim is his capture, and then to hammer out a mutually beneficial agreement with himself and his group. So, for today's lecture, we need to begin with a quick lesson on the Abomination Sphere. We know shockingly little about the world those of the Abomination Sphere breach from. What little knowledge we do possess comes from observations we make of those entities that breach our sphere. For example, we believe the world itself is a low-light environment, as the development of eyes within the sphere has taken a very different path. Many Abomination entities are completely devoid of eyes, using other senses to compensate, while some have eyes that are vestigial, being completely non-functional. And those that do have functioning eyes, their eyes are extremely overdeveloped, giving them vision in almost complete darkness. As an extension of this low-light environment, we believe that plant life, or plant-like organisms, are extremely rare upon their world, though not entirely absent. There are those Abomination entities that have breached our sphere that are herbivorous in nature, however they are the exception and not the rule. The vast majority of the Abomination sphere's species appear to either be carnivorous or omnivorous. This at first glance would appear to create an unbalanced ecosystem. However, we believe there is a piece of this puzzle that we have yet to discover that would explain this paradox. However, the main takeaway to this is that the majority of Abomination entities are carnivorous in nature, even down to the smallest of animals within the macro scale. The Abomination equivalent to insects are just as likely as any other within the sphere to be carnivorous. The fact is, we have yet to discover any pollinators within the sphere. Instead, these insect-like beings take on the role of parasites and decomposers. Beings like the bursters and fleshlice are prime examples of this, being parasitic and decomposers respectively. In regards to the fleshlice, while within our sphere they are very aggressive, predatory animals, we believe that within their own sphere they act more as decomposers, devouring the dead, only then to be eaten themselves by larger Abomination entities with crushing teeth. Today's topic is somewhere in between the other two. At least within its own sphere. We believe that its primary role within its ecosystem is to kill off the sick and injured, ending their lives to make room for successive generations. I think the best way to explain the Bicwnen is to follow along with its life cycle within our sphere. We begin with the body of a man. Our theoretical unfortunate fell to his death after tumbling from a cliff during a hike. The body, on closer examination, is not entirely still. The skin seems to writhe gently up and down in countless spots. Going through the skin, we can see why. What we assumed was a lifeless body was in fact a skin bag, hollowed out of its original contents and now filled with the undulating multitudes of Bicwnen larvae. They have long since devoured all the man was, bar the epidermis, it now acting as a protective barrier between the young Bicwnen and the outside world. The issue now for the young creatures is that they are starving. With all their human home could offer used up, there is nothing left for them to feed upon, except each other. Still weeks away from maturity and pushed to near madness by hunger, the larvae begin to hunt one another. Once the first bites down into its once sibling and now prey, warm blood is released into the wriggling mass, and a frenzy of activity begins. Some attempt to hide within the man's hollowed-out fingers, but even their competition is fierce. This battle royale of eat or be eaten will continue for days until only 10% of the larvae remain. These lucky few, their bellies full and their hunger sated, wriggle beneath the now deflated skin, finding isolated locations where they can create their cocoons. Weeks pass with no movement from the husk that was a man, and then one day it happens. Across the surface of the skin, tiny pin-like structures pierce from the inside, opening up the skin sac to the outside world. Crawling through these freshly made holes are the adult form of the Bicwnen. The blade-like structure attached to their heads break off after they are freed to the open air, falling to the floor. What is left is a creature the size of the common housefly. Lacking a mouth and eyes, though with 6 powerful wings, the Bicwnen's adult form possesses only one bodily sense, that of thermal receptors. These will allow the adult creatures to locate a suitable host organism to implant the next generation. Once freed from the body that was their home, the little entities will begin by using some of their stored fat to warm themselves, ready for flight. They do this with what is called humming. They move their 6 wings in such a manner not to create lift, but simply to exert their powerful muscles. Once sufficiently warmed, they will take their first and last flight. As stated, their one and only goal is to find an individual suitable as a host for their young, but they are against the clock. With no way of ingesting any new nutrients and relying solely upon the stored fat they accumulated during their larval stage, they have only around 3 days to find a suitable home for their young. For the purposes of our example, one of our hypothetical Bicwnen is lucky enough to find a suitable host organism for the next generation, one Vanessa Bloom. One day she is simply out gardening when she feels a sharp sting upon her shoulder. Assuming she has been stung by a wasp or bee, she thinks little of it and returns to her day. However, inside her body, things have already begun. The adult Bicwnen is job now complete and exhausted will fall to the floor, never to fly again, and dying shortly after. However, running through Vanessa's blood is the literal harbingers of her doom. Resembling a pathogen in nature, the egg form of the Bicwnen spreads throughout the body freely with no resistance from the human immune system that has not evolved to fight against it. The eggs split, creating multiple new organisms saturating the body. However, the victim, in this case Vanessa, feels no symptoms. This is because the Bicwnen aren't trying to kill the victim through fever or any other standard symptom. Instead, they want to make Vanessa do it herself. I'm sure you've heard of intrusive thoughts, the errant voice that tells you to touch the stove or swerve the car. The Bicwnen, as eggs within a human host, creates these thoughts en masse, not consciously of course, their minds being at their largest the size of a pinpoint, but through countless millions of years of chemical evolution introduced to a mind with no defense. At some point, these thoughts that are not her own will win, and Vanessa will die, and the now countless eggs within her body will hatch and begin to feed. Now, I know this seems like a pretty extreme life cycle. However, it must be remembered that this is not accurate to how the creature would exist within its own sphere. While most stages would be the same as in our example, it must be remembered that the Abomination entities evolved alongside these creatures, and as such have some immunity to it. We have tested this under lab conditions, infecting healthy Abomination entities with the Bicwnen eggs, and then testing their blood days later to find it completely clean. However, when testing in the same way upon wounded or elderly Abomination entities, the cycle takes hold, allowing the Bicwnen to reach maturity. This implies that within the Abomination sphere, the Bicwnen act as a control species, eating only those that are incapable of fighting off their egg stage. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes perfect sense, as it removes individuals that, while still able to survive, are unable to reproduce via parthenogenesis. This frees up resources for future generations, allowing them to thrive. Interestingly, the intrusive thoughts aspect of the infection appears to be an exclusively human experience. Upon testing with Abomination entities that were weak enough to become infected, we did not see an increase in risk-taking behavior, and instead saw these individuals simply lay down and refuse to eat or drink. We believe that this discrepancy is a result of the human sentient mind. We are talking about an interaction between two forms of life that were never meant to meet, and due to this, the results are wild and unpredictable. Our best guess is that the eggs change brain chemistry as standard, but within humans, our minds rail against the idea of simply laying down to die, so instead we see an increase in extreme risk-taking behaviors. It has been said on occasion that the job of a hunter is simply the job of an exterminator, but given a more exciting name. While in many cases this is not true, in this case it indeed is. Stopping the Bicwnen in the adult stage is unfeasible at best, equivalent to attempting to kill all the bluebottle flies across the earth. Within the egg stage, we simply have no medications that are effective, their biology being too alien for our treatments. So our only recourse is to stop them during the larval stage, while they are devouring their deceased victim. Unlike the flesh lice and their own adult form, their larval stage does not possess the heat resistance emblematic of the Abomination sphere. We believe that this is due to them relying on the protection of the host organism, which within their own sphere would be resistant to the extreme heats of their world. Due to this, hunters will be called to burn these bodies when they are found. This is still a relatively risky task, as it can be difficult to know how far along their development is within the husk. It has been known to happen that after the burning has begun, the adult forms burst from the husk en masse, infecting the hunter, so protective suits are recommended, similar to a beekeeping suit. You'll know if you set fire to the husk at the right time, as the larva will begin to expand and pop within the body with enough force to be audible. If this task is undertaken at the right time, the Bicwnen will have no defense against you, not even being able to leave their now burning skin suit. The idea of these creatures that evolve to remove the weak and sick from their ecosystem is, or at least should be, disturbing. Don't get me wrong, it is a good and healthy process in a natural environment. However, humanity has moved past such systems. We, at least most of the time, take care of our old and vulnerable, despite them not being able to contribute as much to wider society, and this is a fantastic thing. Such altruism is exceedingly rare, and we should congratulate ourselves for it, even if sometimes we fail. Our care for others even goes beyond our own species, which is not a trait commonly shared by any other creature within our sphere. While there are animals that will symbiotically live with each other, and cases of animal mothers raising the young of other species, it is due to survival or mental anguish, respectively. In our case, however, we do it simply because we can, and to not feels wrong to us, and that should be lauded. We have, and currently do, cause a lot of problems, but we also try to do good beyond ourselves. But that will be all for today. With Arthur's might and Merlin's wisdom, thank you.